Let's get rolling.
All
So
right.
begins. So begins the lab march. Well, we do have a stretch in there where I cover not getting shot and how important it is to not get shot when doing cyber deception in an organization. So there will be a long run there. But before we get too crazy with all of that, we're going to jump straight into venom and poison. And we discussed this briefly early yesterday. We're talking about the difference between the two. We're going to elaborate on that more. So, generally, if you're looking at the difference between poison and venom, poison is something that has to be interacted with, right? So, if you say, like, a poisonous mushroom, right? You don't see a venomous mushroom. Even poisonous spiders, like, honestly, most spiders, they kind of leave you the hell alone. You almost got to interact with the spider or run through its web, and then it becomes a problem. But if we're looking at venom, venomous snakes, those would be things that like strike out at you. By the way, do you guys want some nightmare fuel this morning? Yeah. All right. So a long time ago, speaking of poison and venom and things that are not, I'm not going to do that now, that are just things that you run into in the world. Let me see if I can bring up Chrome. There we go. Oh, you guys getting a preview of the hacking satellite security class. I can give you guys a tour of that class later if you want me to. I don't even think Megan and Zach have seen this. Like, this is like straight up new hotness that I worked on.
No, I haven't seen it. I'd
Yeah.
love to.
Okay. We'll do that maybe like the Ask Me Anything. Does that sound good? So there is a tailless wisp, scorpion, Costa Rica. So I'm down in Costa Rica and I'm walking around the building and I can't remember why. It's like something was, I don't know, not working. And it's in the middle of the night. And I go around the corner and I see one of these guys that is the size of my hand right on the wall. They're absolutely dead flat, like just they're terrifying. Technically, they're not a spider. They are a scorpion and they're terrifying. But they're not dangerous. They're actually like the kittens of the arachnid and scorpion world because like if you play with them, they like you and they like want to crawl up and hang out with you. They'll like get on your hand, they'll sit down, they like the warmth, they like chilling out with you. But that's just an example, something that looks terrifying, but it ain't that bad. He's fine. He's a good little guy, just doing things, doing his own thing. No big whoop. But he's not poisonous or venomous. He's just adorable. I did, in fact, scream like a little girl, like whenever I saw that. But when we're trying to sell things in this class, we are selling the idea of poison. We want to create things that the attacker interacts with. And whenever they interact with them, those components, something bad happens to them, predominantly in the area of like attribution, preferably, where we can actually try to find out where that attacker is, or maybe we can annoy the attacker, where we can actually crash out services and things like that. But we are not going to be striking back because, like I said, that one author in that Wired article, she wanted to write an article about people that were actively hacking the hackers. And that wasn't what we were selling. It wasn't what we were talking about at RSA. So we're going to break this up into the three A's, right? We're going to be annoyance, attribution, and attack. Those are going to be the three tiers that we're going to be going through over these next few sections. So starting out with some concepts, some ideas, and honestly, a little bit of history for me like and how I got started in doing this cyber deception stuff. I'm going to share with you stories. It kind of took me a long time to get here to this place where I have a class and I'm kind of teaching it, and we're going to kind of go back in time with some cool stuff there. All right, so PHP IDS. Now, a long time ago, there was a security website where if you went to the website and you started doing cross-site scripting and SQL injection attacks and all of these different things, after a certain clipping threshold, Mr. Clippy would show up, and Mr. Clippy would just pop up on the website and say, "Hello, according to PHP IDS, it looks like you're trying to pwn my site. Would you like help with that?" Now, I want you to think of this in like the mentality of a hacker trying to break into a website, right? You're just kind of doing your hacking thing. You're just doing what you do. And all of a sudden, the website pops up this link. And if you click on the "Would you like help with that?" it takes you to the OWASP website. So what it basically is telling you is, "Hi, noob, get good." Now, let's look at the mental space of an attacker, right? Is it a good idea to taunt Happy Fun Ball? Should you even look directly at Happy Fun Ball? Now, a lot of people in the industry will say things like, nah, you really shouldn't taunt hackers because you're going to make them angry. It's better if you just lay down, curl yourself into a ball, let them beat the piss out of you until they get tired, because that's the way you deal with hackers. You don't want to make them angry because they might beat you. I don't know, right? This kind of gets into the bully dilemma. And I've had this on panel discussions and conversations that I've been with where people are like, we don't want to anger and enrage the hackers. And I hate this idea because if we start doing our computer security in such a way that we don't piss off hackers, we've lost at that point. You might as well just pack up, give up, and not do computer security anymore because, you don't want to make hackers mad. When that's literally our job. That is literally what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be frustrating a hacker. We're supposed to be stopping hackers. We're supposed to be kicking hackers out of our environments. We're supposed to be doing all of these things. And we don't want to play the game of like, don't make them angry, right? No, make them angry. Now, let's talk about the mindset of an attacker that comes into an environment and they see something like this, because I do believe that that's really, really super important when we're trying to set the stage. Okay, let me explain. When I was working for the United States government, right? I still have clearances, but I did nation state level things. One of the key rules that we always had was don't get effing caught. Don't get caught, right? And the reason why they didn't want anybody to get caught was actually a number of different reasons, right? The first reason why they didn't want anybody to get caught is because they didn't want to burn you as an individual. If they could find out who you were as a person, that could be very bad for you and your family. The second reason why they played the game of don't effing get caught is the tools, tactics, and procedures that a nation state level adversary utilizes are very expensive to develop and acquire. And sometimes they take a ridiculous amount of time to develop and acquire. So if you're looking at all of this and then you couple it with like organized crime or any type of cybercrime for that matter, and you realize that there's now risk involved with the type of hacking that you're doing, that changes your mindset, your mentality. So I want you to think about it through this lens. If you're somebody that's a nation state level adversary and you're trying to break into a website and Mr. Clippy pops up and basically calls you a noob, you're done. You're done. You're going to throw up a flag. You're going to talk to your commanding officer or whoever's making the decisions in the cyber offensive campaign that you're working on. And then they're going to make a determination as to whether or not to continue or terminate the mission within the parameters that are provided. Now, it's very rare whenever you're working doing nation state stuff, especially some of the adversaries of the United States. Most of the stuff I was doing was probably in the Middle East. But when you're looking at that, you're not even close to a near peer adversary at that particular point. So a lot of the like commanding officers and the people that I would work with, they would proceed with the mission because a lot of the missions were very time sensitive. Fair enough. But if you're doing intelligence, let's say you're the CIA, you're the NSA, and you're using specific like tools, tactics, and procedures that maybe cost millions of dollars to produce, hundreds of thousands at least, it's very likely that one of two things is going to happen. First thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, back off. It's not worth it. The second thing that's going to happen is we're going to set up a different operating profile where we're going to watch on the outside of the environment, fingerprint the technology, wait for vulnerabilities to arise that we can exploit, and then exploit those at a later date, find a different pathway. The third, just give up and walk away, very rare. But the point is, this changes the approach of the attacker. Now, let's talk about organized crime. Let's talk about your general skidiots, right? If we're looking at the skidiot side, if you have Mr. Clippy pop up and now you know a trap exists in that environment, the entire environment becomes a trap. And what are you going to do as an attacker? Let's say that you're going to proceed. What are you going to do as an attacker as soon as you know that there's traps in this environment? How is it going to affect your tempo, your cadence of hacking, your cacking? Anyone? Bigger boat, get inside their heads. Yeah, psychological warfare. If you know absolutely, okay, let me give you another analogy. If you're walking across a field and you see that there's a claymore or a mine, landmine in that field, how are you going to go through the rest of that field? You're going to slow it way down. You're going to be more cautious. And in the game of what we're dealing with in this class, that's a win, right? That is absolutely a win because we've now changed the operational tempo for the attacker. I want you to think about that. No other defensive technology that you have in your environment, other than cyber deception, has that capability of changing the operational tempo and speed of an attacker trying to break into your environment. Because now every single computer, every single service, every single user is a potential trap that could trigger them being detected. Way back a long time ago, this is 2007. When I somebody came across someone, they're like, "Yeah, I wasn't even born then." I'm like, "My God, are you still in high school?" It's crazy. But in 2007, there was this Boing Boing article. I got to describe what Boing Boing was. Boing Boing was like Reddit, I suppose, maybe is the way you can think about it. A lot of IT people were out there. And there was an article where someone was talking about how he came across this Apache server that was running on a Commodore 64. And he was so excited. And he was basically saying in the article, he's like, see, the Commodore 64, it could have been a contender if it just had a chance. If it just had a chance and things weren't destroyed by Bill Gates and all of this stuff, yada yada, skippy hop, then the Commodore 64 could have been something that we'd all be using today. Now, all right, could have been a joke article, don't know, but what actually was going on is the defender of that Apache server was putting in code that changed the operating system version every like few days to a different operating system, right? So one day it would be an Oric Dragon 32, so the next day it would be a CBM PET, a ZX64 or 48K rubber keys, a Commodore 64 Toshiba HX10, a Cray supercomputer. Now, this is funny and fun, by the way. By the way, I provided some links on how to do this on modern Apache systems down below. But there's also some practicality associated with this. You see, whenever you run a vulnerability scanner, the vulnerability scanner is trying to match up a couple of different things. It's trying to land up banner identification for services, and then it's also trying to correlate that back to what the operating system is. And the reason why is exploits are very much dependent on operating systems. You got to have exploit in the app, and you have to have an exploit in the operating system as well, and which one you would use would be dependent on that combination. Now, if you're looking at a vulnerability scanner like Nessus, right? You run Nessus against an environment and it says, well, we've got an Apache 2.0.59 server. There's going to be a lot of vulnerabilities for that server. But if it's running on a Cray, well, your vulnerability scanner is going to be like, I got nothing. I don't even know. I got nothing on this, right? So this can actually frustrate the attackers. And this is kind of the beginning of creating smokescreen, which is a big part of what we are doing in the annoyance section of this particular class that we're going to be teaching. All right. Another fun thing that you can do, a lot of organizations have DNS records. They just do. It's just some of them maintain them. Some of them outsource it to a third party. But a lot of organizations also have an external IP address footprint that's larger than what they're using. So let's say that somebody is running a /24 for CIDR, and that /24 is 256 IP addresses, probably like 253 usable IP addresses, and they're using two, right? They got like a VPN server and a web server, and that's it, right? That leaves a lot of potential IP address space that the defenders could be using to frustrate the attackers, right? So one of the things you can do is when you're attacking, you can do a DNS reverse lookup where you don't look up on a name like www.blackhillsinfosec.com. You instead go against the IP ranges and you do a reverse lookup to try to identify what are the host names for those IP addresses. So what you do is you put in a whole bunch of fake systems in your DNS record. So this is an example of a bind DNS configuration file. And we have all of these different DNS IP addresses 100, 101, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. And we're just going to give them fake names, right? We have the mail server, we have the web server, we have whatever. But we give Bill, James, Kim, John, like Farked, whatever. You put in these fake names. And when an attacker does a reverse lookup, that would be your first indication that something weird is going on. But your second indication is if somebody starts to try surfing or actively looking up and connecting to a system that's non-existent, that only exists in the host name in your DNS configuration, well, that changes the approach of how you will deal with that attacker. Because now you're probably dealing with somebody that is a real attacker that did a real reverse lookup and they're trying to come at your environment. This is all about trying to clean up that signal to noise ratio, right? We want to make sure that we have a number of different entries and things like that, but there's a lot of attacks hitting the outside of our environment. And if we can identify that this IP address is actively coming against our environment, is actively trying to reverse the IP addresses in our environment, well, that means the amount of effort that we should be allocating to dealing with that attacker is probably a little higher than somebody that's just running a default port scan against our environment. So very, very easy. And I put in the MITRE engage, decoy diversity in there as well. All right, so annoyance, and this is going to lead into kind of our first lab that I think is kind of fun, right? So years and years and years ago, well, actually, let me tell you a story first about the DNS stuff. So a long time ago, when I first started doing stuff on cyber deception, oddly enough, I was still teaching at the SANS Institute. I had actually talked to the president of the SANS Institute, Stephen Northcutt, and I said, I got this class at cyber deception and all this stuff. And he's like, SANS isn't interested. There's no way. We don't want this class. We don't want to touch this class. Get out of here. You make me uncomfortable. He didn't say that. Stephen was very, very, very nice, but he said, in no uncertain terms, was it going to be a class. But I was doing at night talks and I was running the class at Black Hat that year. And I did an at night talk and I was talking about this, and this exact slide or variation of this slide was up. And one of my absolute best friends, who's like a brother to me, is Josh Wright. Josh is the guy that took over SANS 504 for me. I took it over from Ed Scotus. He's the current Dread Pirate Roberts of SANS 504. And he said he disagreed with this and he wanted to politely come and disagree with me at this at night talk, which I'm perfectly cool with. That's respectful. That's perfectly fine. When I got to the slide, he had a take, and I think his take is right, but also wrong. Let me explain. He said, if I'm a penetration tester, it is my job to find vulnerabilities as quickly and as efficiently as I possibly can. If you're throwing smoke screens up in your environment, then it's going to reduce what I can actually find for vulnerabilities in your environment, and it's going to reduce the effectiveness of my penetration test, and it's going to cost you money. And my response was, so let me get this straight. You want me to reduce my security so that somebody can properly evaluate my security? Now, over the years, this got a lot cleaner, right? Like if I was doing a pen test or hiring a pen tester, Spider 1100 nailed it. Said, tell the pen tester about the honeypots. I agree with that, right? If your number one goal is finding vulnerabilities and enabling that pen tester, tell them where the honeypots are. Make their life easier. However, whenever we're talking about a red team, which is a subset of penetration testing, you shouldn't tell your red teamers, right? The red teamers are testing and evaluating and exercising the blue team, and they want to engage with your environment as your environment sits. So if we're looking at a red team, yeah, you probably would say there might be honeypots. Be careful. But if you're dealing with just a standard penetration test and you're really concerned about the quality coming out of that penetration test, you're probably going to want to tell the attackers where the honeypots are. All right, so moving on to web servers. So going back to penetration testing. This is back at my old house. I was pen testing in the basement and my internet had gone out and I was using a Verizon MiFi for my penetration testing, and my internet connectivity was garbage. It was really, really, really bad. And I was pen testing this particular site, and when I realized something very strange happened. By the way, we have a question that comes up here. How do we differentiate someone scanning an IP because of a honey DNS versus someone scanning an IP range of IP addresses? So you wouldn't care about the IP address. It would be specifically analyzing the host name level request. So if somebody's just scanning your IP address, no big whoop. But if someone is actively trying to scan bill.honeypotorganization.com, that is different. They actually did some reverse lookups and found that specific host that was there. All right. All right, so I'm testing this web app for this bank, and this bank is in Arizona, and it's a bad web app. Like it's really horribly written. I remember talking to the bank IT guy, and he said, "Yeah, I don't use Apache. I don't use .NET. I coded my web server from scratch." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's awesome. You wrote it from, HTML and things like that. Okay, fair enough. But what are you using for the underlying web server? If you're not using .NET and Apache, using Nginx, what are you using?" And he goes, "No, no, no. You don't understand. I literally coded my web server from scratch." So he looked at all the vulnerabilities in Microsoft IIS.NET, and he looked at all the vulnerabilities in Apache and was like, "You know what? I don't want those vulnerabilities. I'm going to skip out on those vulnerabilities. So I'm just going to code my own web server from scratch," because all the vulnerabilities that, the billions of dollars of Microsoft and all the money in the Apache Foundation, I can do it better than all of them. Not a great idea. Anytime anyone's talking about rolling their own software stack from scratch, rolling their own crypto, you need to tell them to lay down on the floor and wait for that urge to pass. He didn't. But one of the things he did in that web server that was brilliant was all of the links were dynamically generated. So if you clicked your account and refreshed it, the actual URL would randomize to a completely different random string. And on the back end of the server, he had a lookup table that like converted those two things back to each other. So like the random string converted to a real page on his web server. Now that had problems. We were able to overflow that service and crash out the web server and things like that. But it was actually good enough to crash my web application crawler as well. Because you could just request the same page, and every time it would give you a random URL for all of those pages. The question was he really wrong? Um, yeah, he was really wrong. I'm just going to go out on a limb tank. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you try to create your own database or create your own web server, that's great from an academic perspective. Don't do it for production. Like you're going to get hacked and it's going to hurt the whole time. But in this situation, he had a really cool thing. And if I let my web crawler run for a period of time, it honestly became a race condition of what crashed first, the web server or my crawler. I'd say it was about 50-50. He would crash my crawler. All right. Now, that was amazing. And based on what we saw on that, we actually created a tool created by Ethan Robish here at Black Hills Infosec called Spider Trap. Now, very, very easy to use tool. You simply run Spider Trap. You can actually feed it a directory listing as well, and then it'll iterate through and give fake directories. Super simple to make it work. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to Intro Labs. I'm going to go back to the lab directory. We're going to go all the way to the bottom, and we're going to choose Spider Trap. Spider Trap, Spider Trap. All right, so we give you a website, we give you a description on it on that as well, how to run help, and then example. We get our IP address, we CD into the op spider trap directory, we start spider trap with our Python 3 spider trap, then it's running. Then from our Windows computer system, you're going to visit your URL and you're going to see that randomly generated strings are generating. Then we can go a little bit deeper, and instead of doing randomly generated strings, we can have it actually go and give a full, real, honest to God directory listing from a tool called Dirbuster as well. So we've got that, and you can see how it gives different links. So that is the lab. All right. So let's jump in. This lab's going to take us about, let's do 20 minutes on the clock. and then I will resume. I'll walk through it, explain it, and then we'll take a quick bio break. All right, so get rolling. 20 minutes. Let's do it. All right. So welcome back. Hope you had a good lab. Let's kind of talk through this lab a little bit. I realized I did not start my virtual machine. So a little bit of a problem there on my side. So it's starting up right now. How the Collab Lab's working for y'all? You guys doing all right? I was turned into a Muppet. That's good. Mm, yeah. I don't know if Jesse, you realize since we moved to Meta CTF for the labs, it's gone way better. I think the labs making it accessible is one of the best things that we can do because getting a computer that can run full virtual things on there as well. Yeah, you totally should. You can either stop them or destroy them. I'll tell you which labs we should stop and which labs we should destroy. This is not a destroy lab. This is just stop it. It's kind of the equivalent of pausing your virtual machine. Yeah, it just works and it works well. All righty. So once again, when we're looking on this, so this is not enterprise. You could integrate it. What you would do is you would put like a hidden link inside of your website so a crawler would automatically hit this particular site and have it jump over to another IP address. But this is something that you can code up in most websites, and probably just need to set this up. We have some more ADHD type stuff that we're working on at Black Hills Information Security, and our interns are working on it. And this tool has been around for a really long time, right? So we just simply listens on port 8000 and then it serves up randomized links. Now, a long time ago when we first created this tool, kind of a funny story. I don't know why my lights are all messed up back here. Kind of a funny story. We actually trapped Googlebot. So this has been around a long time for BHIS, and we set up a site and we ran it on the internet and we were watching for attackers hit it. And I noticed that Googlebot got stuck in this infinitely recursive directory looping thing for a really long time. Like I think it was like a couple of hours. And then finally I set it free. You know, it was on my net and I cut it out of my net. I said, be free, Google, be free. Continuing your process of don't be evil. Don't ever let the evil ones take you, Google. My, how times have changed. It went, and a lot of the different types of automatic vulnerability web crawling and scanning tools that are out there today, they are basically they have like tweaking configurations. If they see a 200 response every request that it makes, then it will just stop after like 3 or 4 levels. And things like Nessus will only crawl like 3 layers deep and then it stops. So a lot of the crawlers have kind of worked that into, looking for especially the randomized link type thing and kind of shutting that down. So that's the reason why the Dirbuster component was added to it, right? Because with Dirbuster, it's not just randomized links like this that are just the same thing again and again and again over and over again, but rather it's actually giving it a real, like, this is the tool that attackers use to identify the directories on web servers, right? So all of these different directories are formerly known directories of legitimate web servers, Tomato Planner, we got some numbers, Rothberg, whatever, index chart, of course, things like that. So that allows these crawlers to get stuck a lot longer. Now, whenever we do this and we get it set up in our browser, I'm going to go ahead and just fire it up here real quick. And then we're going to talk about what it looks like whenever an attacker tries to break in to your server and what it actually looks like for the attacker itself. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up my Kali terminal. Quick as unto a gazelle. Let's go through this really quick, right? And then if I just start Spider Trap, this is kind of what happens when the attacker tries to come in to your website, right? So you can do the wget, right? So let me go ahead and pull that down right here. And when most web app pen testers, bug bounty people, and even hackers do whenever they're dealing with websites and trying to break into websites, is they'll start up an automated tool and just let it go, right? They'll just let it go. And this gets into a really interesting component of poison, right? So on the right-hand side, you can see the attacker is just doing this wget where they're running it again and again and again. And a lot of times the attacker won't see that. They just see it kind of kick off a little bit, and then they go and get a cup of coffee or they go to bed, which is an equally good idea, right? They'll just kind of shut it down. Now, what happens next, I personally think, is kind of magic, chat. I think it's pretty amazing what happens next. If the website keeps giving it to an attacker that's using like a legitimate commercial or even Z attack proxy type tool, it's just going to keep going and going and going. In fact, while this is going, I'll actually show you what it looks like whenever we fire it up in Zap. I'll get Zap going. But on the background of the attacker's computer system, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to show you what happens here. Let me restart this. There we go. If I type ls on this system, you can see that it created a directory 127.0.0.1:8000. Okay. If I cd into that directory, right? If I cd into that directory and I type ls, it created a copy of every single fake site or page on that site that it generated, right? If you allowed this to continue to run longer, right? If you allowed this to continue to run longer for the attacker, it would have completely exhausted the entire hard drive of the computer system and crashed the computer, right? And this kind of shows you the power of that poison that we can put in place, right? Okay, with the root certificate, going to go ahead and allow that run. It's going to pop up and ask me about updating here in a couple of seconds. Click OK. There we go. All right, so I don't want to remember this session. So I'm going to do an automated scan, kind of show you what it looks like right here. Let's open up and get my IP address. There we go. There's my IP. And I can put in that IP address here and just have it go. Oh, did I shut it down? Oh, I had to put in the port. Let's put in port 8000. And then let's start that attack. There we are. So now it's starting to do that crawl, and this is what it looks like for like an actual attack tool. You can see it quickly jumps up to like 14, 15%, and then it gets stuck, and then it goes backwards. Now it's at 13, and it just keeps going. Yeah, look at it go. And it just goes. So one of two magical things is going to happen. Like I said, either thing one is going to be, we're going to fill up the entire hard drive. The thing two that we're going to do is would actually fill up the memory of the tool. Like in this situation, eventually Z attack proxy would crash. And that's awesome, right? Like this is the type of stuff that we're looking for, an annoyance that will really mess with the attacker's ability to effectively identify all of the different parts of the website. Now, somebody brought up something, and I did have a lab with this years ago when this was like a 6-day class, where you can create a gzip bomb. Hello, Daddy. Hello, Mom. Gzip bomb. So instead of actually giving like a whole bunch of different directories, you can totally, like I said, if you're a risk taker, try it yourself, and it'll literally just like crash it. Like here, SQL map, high memory usage until crash. Curl never stops loading the content, CPU usage. Hydra never stops loading content, but low CPU usage. So you can, let me explain what a gzip bomb is. So whenever you're sending data over the internet, we actually compress it before it's actually sent. A lot of times this is used with gzip. So instead of sending like raw, uncompressed video and audio over the internet, we're going to compress it first and then send it down the line, and it'll be decompressed on the other side. You can create a gzip bomb where it's a very, very small file that is actually a representation of like 70 million ones, right? It just compresses very, 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 very small. And then whenever it expands on the attacker's computer system, it blows up. So I used to have a lab that did this, but well, the reason why I kind of got rid of it was because it crashed student systems. Like, I know that that's kind of the point, right? Like, oh, look, the system crashed. But the issue that we ran into is students genuinely got frustrated whenever they got nailed with the gzip bomb. That literally was the point of the lab. They would be like, oh my God, my whole system crashed. I'm like, there you go. It's like, well, that doesn't seem like a very good lab. I'm like, no, 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 really. That's like what this lab is about. And they're like, why would you make me crash my computer system? That was a bit funny. So I just removed it because it was so utterly and horribly confusing. Well, we can talk about it just fine, right? So, anarchist cookbook, yes, very much. That's what this class is like. All right, so now let's spend a little bit of time. Let's talk about how to not get shot. And I should probably take a few moments and establish this section so people kind of understand why I created this section. Because people are like, wow, he's really going off the deep end here with non-attribution of cyber deception technologies. Is John okay? No, no, honestly, not okay. Not okay at all. Well, and the reason for that is years and years and no, this is not, none of this, Drozy is considered hacking back, just to be clear, right? At this particular point, we haven't gained persistent access. We haven't targeted an attack at an attacker's computer system. Like literally, this is just an attacker. It's you guys know about Turkish delight, right? Which I know makes people uncomfortable. They're like, oh my God, where's this class going now? So Turkish delight. So Turkish delight and Narnia, right? The whole idea of Turkish delight and Narnia was there was this food that this kid couldn't stop eating, right? And the witch, that lady right there, was giving this kid Turkish delight, and he just kept eating this Turkish delight. And eventually, he got so big that he got round, and they had to roll him. They had brought out these Oompa Loompas, and then they rolled him into a river of chocolate to where a lion ate him. I might be mixing my movies a little bit and my books here a little bit. I'm not entirely certain if I got that right or not, but he just couldn't stop eating it. I mean, look at this kid. This kid's got a problem. She's like, what happens if we ran out of Turkish delight? And this actor in this movie was phenomenal. He was just like, you're not going to get rid of Turkish delight. People are asking, was John drinking today? No, I'm like this like all the time. It's annoying, right? But when we're talking about this, this isn't hacking back. You just keep eating the damn Turkish delight. They just keep coming back again and again and again. So that's not hacking back. All right. All right. So a long time ago, I was teaching this class for law enforcement, and I set up the class was tweaked specifically in the way of doing attribution, right? So it wasn't necessarily quote unquote hacking back or cybersecurity and defense. It was about finding bad people. And I'll talk more about that when we get to Honey Docs a little bit later. But the students that I had loved the class. They did great in the class. And then they went off and they did law enforcement things. Well, about a few months, I want to say it was like 4 months later, one of the lead techs for this law enforcement organization contacted me and said, dude, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We used a whole bunch of the techniques in your class, and we were able to bring down a really bad drug lord. And I'm like, oh, bad drug lord. He's like, yeah, the dude was bad. Like, we're talking heads in duffel bags, cutting off fingers of family members and sending it to make a point. Really, really incredibly bad guy. And we used this stuff. We found him, and it was great. Thank you. I said, oh, where did you guys end up hosting all your stuff? Like, we had these cloud VMs, and where did you guys end up hosting them? And he goes, we we used the VMs that you gave us in class. Now, this is before MetaCTF, and these were straight up raw, like systems in the cloud in Apache that were licensed under my name. So they literally used my servers to bust a drug dealer who had a habit of chopping off people's appendages. And it was kind of like a Steve Urkel thing. Like, was I not supposed to do that? It's like, no, you weren't. Now, it was my fault, right? It was my fault. Should have. Should have shut those VMs down. Should have killed them. Didn't. I regret it. So from that point on, I started thinking if someone was going to implement these things, how would they actually do it in such a way that they could do it safely? And I'm going full tilt paranoia between not doing anything and what I'm going to talk about here in the class is literally an infinite possibility of options. Choose some of them. You don't have to go as crazy as I'm going to talk about here, but these are things you may want to think about. Okay. So once again, if there's any questions, don't put the questions in Zoom. I won't see them. I've got Discord right here, over here, chat. I've got Discord scrolling by. Zoom is occupying this space that I'm teaching. So somebody was asking, does anybody have an issue with burner phones? We're going to talk about those here in a bit. Absolutely. But yeah, if you have any questions, just mention me. Throw them up here in Discord. And I've got my Discord up here. Just answer your questions, chat. All right. So let's say that you want to set this stuff up, right? One of the things about dealing with an attacker is direct counter connections kind of gets into that idea of hacking back. We don't want to scan and attack that attacker. We just don't. Okay. The other thing that we really want to avoid is we don't want to make any kind of sudden moves until we're absolutely certain that we're ready to go into the IR phase. And it's often when you're setting some of this stuff up, a lot of organizations, they're like, why don't you just set this up on your own account with your own credit card? Because they don't want it to be associated with their corporation, right? And I get that, but you shouldn't try to protect the corporation by putting someone at risk. You don't want to be like Office Space. Like, is it good for the company, right? We don't want to look at things that way. So we had another question here. Is there something that would be integrated in a production web server or to just be a separate web honeypot? You can do both. You can stand it up on your own honeypot, but you can also integrate a hidden form element that references a link to another service or page or port on the exact same system, and the attacker would hit it from a crawling perspective. But usually I would just try to code it directly in. All right, so a couple of things I recommend is consider setting up ADHD in a non-attributable fashion, preferably on a third-party hosting provider. Now, there's a bunch of different hosting providers. Our personal favorite right now is using DigitalOcean. We use DigitalOcean for all of our pen testing needs at Black Hills Information Security. We used to work with Linode or Linode, Lish, Lish is their shell. Whenever I think of a web server in the cloud, I wish my hands with a swish, 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 and I get a lish, lish, lish on my server in the cloud. Linode, we stopped using them because they literally shut down our entire infrastructure in the middle of a pen testing engagement after we told them that it was a legitimate pen testing engagement, which is bad, right? Really bad. But DigitalOcean is cool. They work with us really, really well. They know that we're a legit pen tester. You got to give them a heads up. Amazon doesn't seem to care all that much. There are some things they do care about, but honestly, things like this, they just don't seem to mind. Okay. So you want to set it up somewhere, preferably in the cloud, that isn't directly set up for your organization. And we're talking about the ADHD system as it relates to like setting up callbacks, right? Also, when you set these things up, you want to set it up with a name and an email address that is not a real person. Right. So see if you guys can find this person. My alter ego online is a gentleman by the name of Xander Thorstenson. And whenever I set these things up, I do that. Another question from Georgic. I'm assuming that you add a robots.txt so legit web crawlers don't crawl it. Absolutely. You absolutely would set something up like that. Because if we're setting up robots.txt and we're going to try to set this, and we got the Turkish delight. If I was to go to this, just this random website, let's go to, I don't know, let's go to these guys, right? So if I go to these guys right here and I do / to robots.txt, this is all of the robots.txt entries at this website. Okay. Now, some of these, if you try to go to like the admin page, it'll automatically deny list you, right? It'll automatically deny list you. Okay. It'll just shut you down. This is put on by Johannes Ulrich, right? So yes, you can do the robots.txt because legitimate crawlers will avoid those different directories and attackers will go directly at those directories. And we can do a number of those different things as well. Josh Wright had a story of getting deny listed that way. Actually, it's kind of funny. He has a story I have one too, where I talked about this in one of my classes at a large event, and everybody at the conference was popping through the exact same IP address from the hotel because we were using the hotel's ISP. We were all going out. My students tripped it, and it actually locked everybody at the conference from being able to go to the SANS website. And that wasn't just students. That was all of the staff. Like they couldn't get to their email, they couldn't get to anything. And I'm the one that got in trouble for that. I'm like, trap just kind of sucked, I guess. So it was, yeah, whoopsie daisy. So, all right. So we want to set it up with a name and an email address that is not directly associated to a real person. We'll talk more about how to set that up and then register it all through something that's non-attributable, right? Email, PayPal, domain, and hosting. Proxy software, when you're setting up your account, don't ever use proxy software. If you're setting up an email, if you're setting up a credit card, if you're setting up PayPal, do not bounce through proxies. And there's lots of proxy software out there. You can use like what are the big VPNs you see on like talk shows on radio and like blogs and things. I get very angry. Nord, okay, you got these people that's like, are you afraid of let's see if I can do this in such a way. Let's see if I can do justice. Are you tired of big tech identifying all of the different technologies and all the different websites that you go to? Well, what you have to do is what I do. What I do is I protect my identity online by using NordVPN. So the ISPs cannot track exactly what I am doing. It's all crap, right? I have people that listen to these things and they're like, well, do you use a VPN to protect yourself online? Not really. Like, because it honestly doesn't make any difference, right? Like, I don't know of anybody that's like, and then my ISP saw what I was doing and I got hacked. Oh wait, I do criminals. A lot of criminals run into that. Now, once again, excluding VPNs for people in different parts of the world where they get killed for going to websites like, I don't know, Wikipedia, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about here on that as well. But as I said, when you're setting up these sites, if you're going through a VPN or if you're bouncing through, Tor, any of those different things, the sites get really tweaky for creating an email, creating a website, and setting up something like PayPal if they know that you're using some anonymization technology. So, how do we anonymize what we're doing in a way that isn't necessarily going to create this suspicion with the provider out there? Well, one of my favorites is when you're setting up like PayPal domain registration email, go to McDonald's, go to Walmart. McDonald's and Walmart and all these places, hotel chains, like big hotel chains, especially ones like Hilton, they have internet providers and they pop all of their traffic, whether it's McDonald's or Best Buy or whatever, they pop all of their internet traffic through a main ISP pop out in like Atlanta or Milpitas or something like that. And the reason why they're doing this is because a lot of these different big companies are monitoring and traffic that you're going to, and they're using it for like advertising purposes. It's kind of weird, but that's what they're doing. But they're great from an anonymizing aggregator, right? So if I go to a McDonald's here in Bozeman and I'm going through that network connection, then that's going to be output someplace else in the United States. And a whole bunch of McDonald's are going to be aggregating out through that. So trying to track me back to where I am is actually going to be fairly difficult. The other thing that it's going to do is it's not going to trip the hosting provider. It's not going to trip PayPal. It's not going to trip DNS registrars because it's such a normal site. Like if your traffic's coming from McDonald's or Hilton or anything, we don't want to make it a pain in the ass for everyone that's at a hotel to get these things as well. So all of this stuff is stuff that you got to think of. But after you have it established, okay, after you go through that, Drowsy has a question about MAC addresses. I'm going to get to that here in a second. The answer is no, but I'll get to that. Whenever you're dealing with this, after you've got it set up, you've gone through McDonald's, you've gone through Hilton, and it's set up and it's configured, use proxies all day long to access. They will not get weird if you're accessing your email through a proxy. They will not get weird if they're accessing your hosting provider through a proxy. It's that initial setup. Now, the question was about MAC addresses. Remember, MAC addresses are at layer 2. And I sometimes feel like I'm being set up, Brian. But it's at layer 2. So your MAC address does not bleed out onto the internet. That header is stripped off at the edge of your network, and no one will ever see your MAC address on the internet as a whole. So good question, but you don't have to worry about MAC addresses on that as well. All right, here we go. All right, other thing when we're trying to set up non-attributable email, trying to avoid things like Google and Microsoft, privacy is really not their thing. It just isn't. And I know Proton lately, I know that there was a situation where Proton was giving information to law enforcement authorities, but they're still better when you're talking about privacy than Google and Microsoft. And I know I'm like acting like a criminal with this stuff, but that's kind of the level of paranoia that I'm can kind of push to for some of my customers and some of the things that I've been doing is because the crap, like finding out, I wasn't joking, finding out that there's some drug lord that's in prison and they were using my servers in Amazon to find that person makes me really uncomfortable, right? That just makes me uncomfortable. So this is highly paranoid. You may not be as paranoid as me, and that's fine. Not a problem at all. Okay. So the other thing is all of your accounts will point back to this particular account, right? You're going to tie it all in. The other thing is with your email, you want to make sure that you use a very long, strong passphrase. I don't want to get into password complexity, but basically, just so you know, the only thing that really matters whenever you're dealing with passwords is length. You want to make your password get up to like 21, 22 characters, even if it's a string of words, and it's not going to be something that someone's going to be able to crack very easily. Okay. So make it very, very, very long. If you have to provide an address for a famous place that has nothing to do with you or anything associated with you. I call this the Blues Brothers approach, right? If you remember in the first Blues Brothers, the greatest musical movie of all time is Blues Brothers, hands down. The worst musical movie of all time is Blues Brothers 2000. Absolutely horrible. It's just bad. Okay. God damn you guys with your OSI layer. You stop. Right. So Blues Brothers, if you remember, they got the driver's license of the Blues Brothers, and the police showed up to try to arrest them. And where did the police show up? They all showed up at Wrigley Field, right? Because they provided a fake address. Now, that's an easy address for you to remember if you do Wrigley Field or Sears Tower or Crazy Horse, Mount Rushmore, or whatever, but it's actually a valid address. So it has to be something that you'll remember so you can Google what that address is, but it's not going to give you away. Yeah, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, right? So there you go. Hosting and domain providers. And some hosting providers are a bit crazy about how they verify who you are. Years ago, God, I can't remember what the hell I was doing. Um, can't remember if it was an op or a class that I was working on. And I can't remember the provider. It was one of those providers that accepts Bitcoin. And I was using Bitcoin to like run this server. And they got really, really uncomfortable with me and they wanted me to send my passport and driver's license to them. And I ended up getting on customer support and I'm like, hey, this is all legit. It's part of a legit engagement. I know it looks, I think it was teaching like spearfishing or something. And they're like, no, 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 no. We don't care. It just looks like you're doing hacker things. The only thing that we care about is making sure that you can pay the bill. So it was like what was the movie The Fugitive? It's like I'm not guilty, and they're like, I don't care. Do you have money? Like that's what they wanted to make sure on that. But some of them get a little strict. Amazon gets a little strict. Microsoft can get a little strict as well. You can either upload or convert the ADHD VM. Honestly, I think it's a better idea just to install the tool set. And when you create your non-attributable instance, be prepared to destroy it. You should never be in a situation where you're emotionally attached to an ADHD system. You shouldn't use a system for multiple ops. You should use it for a standard op, destroy it, and then rebuild it. It should be a virtual machine. It should be a template, something that can quickly and easily be destroyed and recreated as needed. This class is a list of tools, right? That's kind of what we have. So also the provider needs to accept PayPal or prepaid gift cards. I use prepaid gift cards for a long time. One of my customers, Active Defense Harbinger Distribution is what ADHD stands for. Active Defense Harbinger Distribution. Oh, there's a webcast, How to Live. You don't have to live like a criminal. I know it's refugee, but Tom Petty just jumps in. All right. So you want to make sure that they accept PayPal or prepaid gift cards. It so this is one of those things. I used to travel a lot. I still do, but I used to too. And I would go and buy prepaid gift cards in cash at like Walgreens and places, and then I would ship them to some of my customers. So I'd put like 100 or 500 or $1,000 on these cards, and I would ship it off, and then they would send me cash back. Right? It's like a rewards program, right? And it was part of an engagement that I was doing. And I kind of got into the habit of just kind of having a stack of the things around, and you would go through like drawers. Everyone has like the tech drawer with all of the cables and stuff. And you would see like a bunch of prepaid gift cards. When my kids got old enough, they realized that those prepaid gift cards had money. And I found my prepaid gift cards starting to show up in like their clothes. And like, what are you doing with prepaid gift cards on that? So to be careful with those, but prepaid gift cards are the bomb. A lot of them require you to actually they require you to pay for them in cash instead of credit cards, which is kind of crazy on that as well. So like I said, I like DigitalOcean. It works really well for all the things that we do and what we need to do on that. Now, somebody was asking about burner phones. I already talked about my kids kind of, like taking prepaid gift cards and using them to like buy candy and crap like that. So once again, I would teach this class to law enforcement. And one of the things we would do with law enforcement is we would like create like prepaid gift card and burner phones for my students. We would show them how to set up burner phones in a non-attributable fashion and use them for things like ADHD and doing servers and configuring it. Acquiring Bitcoin was another thing that we were teaching them back in the day. And because it was a government class, right? They could take the burner phones with them, but they were really crappy burner phones, right? And some of my students weren't interested in keeping yet another burner phone on them for like pattern of life type problems and things like that as well. And they would just leave them after they were done with class. So they'd come out and I would teach a class at my house out in the middle of nowhere. And I don't know if people have any pictures of me. Brian might have some of me in my barn. It's all big, huge timbers, but the entire upstairs is where I teach my classes live and also where I teach Wild West Hacking Fest intro to pen testing. And we would teach the class, they'd leave and they would leave the stupid prepaid gift card burner phones like just there because they didn't want to take them. They just didn't because it's just more crap that they had to take, I guess. And that makes sense. So these phones would go into like a Tupperware bin and I would reuse them for my classes. So we'd just get new cards, we'd re-update them and then move forward. Well, my kids really wanted cell phones. My kids were right at the beginning age of cell phones and getting into it. All the kids today have cell phones. And I remember we got called into one of my kids. It was one of my boys. It was either Logan or Landon. I can't remember which. And we got called into the school and kind of an emergency parent teacher conference. It was Landon. Thank you. And I went in and we were talking to the teacher and she's like, we've confiscated like two or three phones from your son. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, she pulls out these phones. She's like, he keeps bringing them to school. And I asked him, why does he have so many cell phones? And he said that those are my dad's burner phones. So I had to sit and explain to my son's middle school teacher, why does his dad have burner phones? And try to walk through and, oh, I do training for law enforcement and things, and we do burner phones. And she never really trusted me again, like ever. It was the relationship was strained. The relationship was definitely strained on that as well. So they're easy to get, they're easy to stand up. I'm going to give you a couple of things for pattern of life, and it really depends on how insane you want to be. Okay, I don't know how insane you want to go, but some of the engagements that we do with intelligence and DoD communities is we teach people how to act in a near peer adversary country, right? So if you're a spy, right, or you're somebody in the military that's transitioning through a potentially or quasi hostile country, there's certain things that you do to protect yourself and obfuscate your pattern of life. One of the things you do is you just do not go through with your work computer ever, right? So if you're going through an airport through some countries, you just don't bring your personal computer. Instead, you use USB sticks that are encrypted and you buy a computer when you get on site, right? You get on site, you buy a computer, you use it for the op, you install Kali and everything on it. And then when you're done, you give it to some random person on the street and you walk away, right? There's number one. Number two is dealing with pattern of life as it is with cell phones, right? If my cell phone always goes off and immediately my burner phone comes on, that is actually a tie that can easily be tracked with law enforcement in any country that you're in. So if I know John's cell phone, which is very trackable, and John's cell phone lands in, Lilliput, and then immediately a burner phone turns on, and then my phone shuts off, they're able to track that. Okay, right? If these two phones are on at the same time and they're always in the same location, we can pair together who that person is with their burner phone and track that as well. So some of the things, depending on how like absolutely paranoid you want to be, is when you're establishing and creating burner phones and you're using them, one of the things that you can do is go to a very densely populated area like a mall or a sporting event and activate your burner phone there at the sporting event, because then that phone is going to be something or the mall that's going to be in the same place and location as literally thousands of other people, right? You can activate it, get it working, shut it off, and then you're okay. The other thing that you can do is take your burner phone and your regular phone to a coffee shop, leave it with a family member, and then take your burner phone, leave your regular phone at the coffee shop, and then take your burner phone someplace else and go work over there. Once again, I don't know how paranoid you want to be, but here's the problem with Faraday bags, right? You can put that in your regular phone, but full overkill, that actually is a pattern of life. Because if your phone disappears off the planet, that is a huge red flag for nation states. So if we're tracking criminals with a warrant, if we're tracking people overseas, almost rarely do people's phones get shut off. It's very rare for people's phones to get shut off. So by shutting off your phone or putting it in a Faraday bag, that creates an indicator that we can pick up on, and then we can start looking for prepaid phones in that area and start tracking those. So a better idea is to leave your phone with a friend, leave your regular phone with a family member, go someplace else, and then turn on your burner phone so it's non-associated with your phone. And once again, this is insane. Okay. This is not something that I recommend you do for all of the different ops that you're doing. I'm just telling you, for some of the ops and some of the people that we've worked with, we have that level of insanity. Airports are great too. But the problem is, if you land, you turn on your phone, and then you turn on the burner phone at the same time, that can create some issues. So if I was going to do it at an airport, Tank, I would land, not take my phone out of airplane mode, have it completely off until I clear customs, then get a burner phone, activate that burner phone, do whatever I do with that burner phone, then shut it off, and then turn on my phone. But I would make sure that those phones are not paired with each other. So once again, this is nuts. Okay. This is just crazy. And I get that, but it kind of depends on what level of insanity and what type of bad people you're going after. Pay for it all. I've had companies with some of my like students and customers say literally, you know what you need to do? Just go buy it on your own personal credit card and then we'll reimburse you. This makes me uncomfortable. Now, I know, once again, this is insane, that the odds of the credit card company getting popped and then being able to track that I acquired something with that credit card, incredibly low. But why take the risk when it's so easy to go to Walgreens, get a gift card? Super, super simple to do. They force you to pay with cash. Now, I tend to avoid Walmart Because Walmart is doing that crazy facial recognition thing. I don't know if you notice when you check out at Walmart, they actually show you a video display of like all the points that it's tracking on your face. Pisses me off. I don't like being treated like a criminal for being a customer. So if you can find some place that doesn't have that, once again, that makes me feel better on that as well. And then you can take that card and associate it to something like PayPal, and away we go. So once again, the ADHD system is very much set up for the callbacks. So you can still set up honey docs, you can set up honey badger, you can set up canary tokens, you can set up all of these things, but when the callback happens, it's not going to call back to your environment. It's instead going to call back to that hosted environment. So let me show you something. So if I go into my VM here, I'm going to go ahead and connect. Oops, I got to relog in. Just give me a moment. Sorry, I got the Zoom things in the way. Zoom zoomies. All right, let's go here. Oh, I don't have it there. Never mind. I'm going to start it up. But if you look at where your computer is going on the internet, like if you just open up a website, and I'll show you this probably in the next lab. But if you just go to yahoo.com, your computer is going to all kinds of different ad and content delivery networks, right? So you have ad networks that have weird names like AV612B, right? Like, what the hell is that? It's an ad network, right? They come up with all kinds of names and they randomize the names all the time. CDNs, right? Content delivery networks, which I'm going to talk about some more here in a little bit. These all have weird names. So what you want to do is you want it to call back to a domain that kind of blends in, and you can do some really funky names like A quadruple 01Z. What the hell is that? That's your callback domain. That's your callback domain, and you set that up in the hopes that the attacker, when they see that callback, they'll think it's an ad network, right? They'll think it's just randomized ad stuff. You don't want to have it named after your specific organization or John Strand's callback honeypot server. That's bad, right? That's not good. You don't want to do that. So we're talking about the callbacks. So now let's start talking about these honeypots, and let's start rocking out some of the labs. So the idea of a honeypot is it's an object that is intended to be interacted with by an attacker and never by a legitimate user. You can honey anything. You can honey anything. Honey tokens, honey record, honey table, honey pot, honey net, honey cred, ports, docs, anything that can be coded in such a way that it does a callback or an alert can be generated on it absolutely can be a honeypot. Also, it should resemble something of value in your organization. You want it to be enticing for the Pooh Bear. And for those of you that don't know, everything that we're seeing reference for Winnie the Pooh, we are talking about Winnie the Pooh, the Disney cartoon, specifically because that's the one that most people are recognized. I know that there's other Winnie the Pooh. We are not talking about Xi Jinping. We are not talking about the premier of China. I know they look like the same thing, but they're not the same thing. They're different. Okay? They're completely different. See that right there? Xi Jinping. Many people look at that and they're like, that's Winnie the Pooh. No, you gotta know the difference between those two. Politics, I don't know if that's geopolitics counts, right? Um, but at any rate, so going on with this, you can honeypot just about anything, right? And anytime there's any level of interaction, it can absolutely be something that should trigger an alert. Now, traditionally, when we're looking at different honeypots, we look at them in two very different ways. One of them would be a research honeypot, okay? A research honeypot is what you see people create when they're researching a new exploit. You see universities doing them all the time. And then there's also production honeypots. Now, in this case, we refer to production or low interaction honeypots as more in line with what we're going to be covering in this class. It's very common whenever I'm talking to university students where they're like, I've got this idea for a thesis or a doctoral paper or anything like that, my master's. I'm going to create a honeypot. I'm going to put it out on the outside of the environment and see how long it takes to get hacked. The answer to that question is not very damn long, right? Now, I don't like those types of honeypots because you don't learn anything from them, number one. And number two, they're high interaction. So if your honeypot is a full Windows operating system, right? If we have a full Windows operating system, then you have to patch it, you have to manage it, you have to update it. If it gets compromised, you need to make sure that it's not going to be used to attack another service someplace else for another organization. We need to make sure that we're doing something that is low interaction. I had the Ron Popeil thing earlier in the slides, but Ron Popeil, may God rest his soul. He always had this thing of set it and forget it, right? Just set it and forget it. You want to be able to set up your honeypot and not worry about it. If you're doing full research, high interaction honeypots with full operating systems, that becomes a lot of love, care, and feeding that you have to deal with. That takes time. We're talking about production ones that we can set quickly. Production files, production user accounts, production services that it's not going to be able to be compromised and used against you, but rather something that can sit and trip alerts for your team. Now, this goes into decoy diversity, decoy network, decoy persona, decoy processes, decoy all the things, right? That's really what we want to focus on is decoying all of the things. So we want to identify malicious internal systems and users, identify attacks that AV and IDS miss, and also can be part of our incident response procedures, which I'll talk about here in just a couple of seconds. So a lot of the research level honeypots are just a huge time sinker. It becomes like a hacker ant farm. And I see people that do this, and I really understand the allure of this. I do. I get it. It's really cool to see what hackers do. And when we're watching them do it live, it's kind of exciting, especially if it's not part of an incident, right? But it's hard to convince management to be part of this. It really is, because management may not see the value with it. And also, they make a valid point, right? We can spend a lot of time, effort, and money trying to catch attackers, or we could just focus on real attacks. I can see why management would lead towards the let's focus on real attacks much more than they would other things. So this gets into a broader issue of incident response. Like, how does your organization deal with IR? Is their primary goal and objective to detect and clear, or detect and watch and learn? All right, let me explain. If your organization is, and neither of these are wrong, neither of these are right, they're just different approaches. If your organization has an approach where they notice that there's an attack, they may look at it like the tailless wisp is on their face, and they're like, get it off, get it off, get it off. It's like a spider, get it off. Let's get back to normal. That doesn't have spiders crawling on my face as quickly as we possibly can. There's value in that. There's absolutely value in that because you're focused and you get to train up your team on that. But there's also value in watch and learn, detect and learn. If you see an attacker who has broken into your environment, if you have the ability to monitor that attacker and see what they're going after, if you have the ability to see that attacker hit an environment and look at how they got in, how are they moving to other systems? Are they moving around in the cloud? That provides a tremendous amount of value for us, a tremendous amount of value for us to get a better understanding of how deeply they have broken into the environment. It gives a better understanding for us to be able to understand what it is they are after in our environment. So there's absolutely valid use cases for detect and clear and also detect and learn in environments. And these honeypots give us a great value in understanding the overall attacker's skill and motivation, right? And this once again goes back to MITRE, system activity monitoring, collect logs and reveal the attacker's activity. So if we're going back to this quote that Bruce Schneier said, he says, security through obscurity is this, no security at all. And this is one of those things where people invoke Saint Schneier whenever they're talking about honeypots. They're like, well, we shouldn't be doing this because Bruce Schneier said security through obscurity is no security. Bruce Schneier was talking specifically about code obfuscation. He was specifically talking about organizations like Microsoft that are randomizing and scrambling things like dynamic link libraries. He was specifically talking about people that are like, oh, you remember what was it? Was it DSSS or DSS, where it was codes for people not being able to rip DVDs, region codes. And there was a joke that came out of that is like, as soon as you think that no one's going to go through the trouble, there's some kid in Sweden who's going through the trouble. And sure enough, it was actually reverse engineered, right? So when you're looking at this concept of security through obscurity, you see it again and again and again where people are trying to obfuscate their code base in an effort to frustrate hackers to be able to, make it harder to break into their software. That's what Schneier was talking about. It's around about the same time that Schneier and Gear were working together on the paper with security monocultures, and and that was when Gear was at stake. It's a lot of that, but it had nothing to do with things like cyber deception. Now, it's entirely possible that Bruce Schneier would think that cyber deception is applicable for that. Entirely possible, and I've argued with Schneier a couple of times. But the point of it is, I think security through obscurity frickin' rocks. That's my quote. But there's a caveat, there's a catch, if you will. And the catch is this. If you're going to do security through obscurity with cyber deception, there needs to be proper alerting and logging on the other side as well. Because if you're just setting up honeypots and you have no tripwires, you have no logging, you have no alerting, then your honeypots are not going to provide any value for the formula. Detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes to attack an environment. Because you may have modified the attacker's attack time, but if there's no detects, then there's going to be no reaction. You need to make sure for everything that you're doing in cyber deception that there's going to be some form of logging, that there's going to be some form of alerting associated with it that you can track and you can respond appropriately. So security through obscurity is awesome as long as you have solid detective controls around those obscurity components that you're going to be implementing. Other security technologies also have significant limitations. And this is one of those problems that I once again have with computer security. And really, this is my side of the house. This is like the offensive security folks, where any defense that you can talk about, they love to point out how it can be bypassed. And I'm guilty for that as well, right? So if you look at some people, they're like, well, AVEDR, well, that can be bypassed. Okay. Application allow listing, that can be bypassed. Well, okay. Firewalls, that can be bypassed. Well, okay. Every single security technology, even like user awareness training, right? People say, well, user awareness training isn't worth it because people are still clicking links. And it's like we're setting this impossibly high bar for what a successful technology is, that it makes it impossible to try to get anything because that bar would never be met. And I'm talking about this and spending a lot of time on it because I don't want you to get bogged down where people are saying, well, cyber deception may have limitations in X. Cyber deception may have limitations in Y and in Z. If we do that, then no security technology will be implemented anywhere. So we need to understand that, yes, there are limitations, but there's limitations to everything. And cyber deception is one of those things we can implement that can help augment and buttress the limitations of other security technologies in our environment. And you're right, it's about mitigation. It's also about defense in depth. So let's talk a little about Honey users, and that's going to take us into a lab here in just a couple of seconds. You can create Honey accounts, and you can set these up in a number of different ways. Tying this again back to MITRE, you can create a decoy account, create a decoy persona. Now, you can do this in things like LinkedIn, right? And by the way, how would an attacker know that an account is something they should go after? I'll give you an example. If you create a LinkedIn account and it says, let's say it's a fake account called Xander Thorstensen, right? If I have the Xander account, I would create it and I would say something like, Xander is a full stack engineer. Xander is somebody that's been coding since he was 6 years old. Xander developed object-oriented coding before object-oriented coding actually was a thing. Look at how much people brag on LinkedIn, and those are the people that we go after when we're trying to break into an organization. So if you're going to create a persona, something on the outside of an environment like LinkedIn, Make it as shiny and as bright as you possibly can. Make this person brag, because people that brag become excellent targets for a couple of reasons. One, they're insecure, and two, they're going to click on any links that you send them. Like if you send them and say, "Hey, we saw your profile. We'd love you to present at this con. Click this link and register." Oh, hell yeah. They're going to click that link and register to try to present at this conference. No question, right? Their ego is out of control. So you need to make it something shiny and bright. The other thing that we're talking about for these accounts is also internal accounts, right? If an attacker breaks in, by the way, when we're talking about honey accounts, we're not just talking external facing, but also internal accounts as well. You can create user accounts that should not be interacted with ever. And as soon as an attacker interacts with that account, you should immediately generate an alert that somebody has interacted with that account. This is easy to do. And this works very, very, very well when you're trying to detect attackers, because it's one of the first things that attackers do post exploitation. So I know we have some offensive people here. Like post exploitation, what are some of the first steps that attackers go for? Anyone? First steps. First steps would be going after low-hanging fruit, be things like group policy preference files, Kerber roastable accounts, right? Enumerating usernames, trying to do an internal password spray, right? They'll do these situational awareness things. Those are all places that we can put cyber deception to trap the attacker. And that takes us into the next lab. All right, so with this lab, we're going to create a honey user. Let me go back to my lab list. There we go. And we're going to do honey user. Now, this is really simple, super easy honey user stuff. Okay. So we're going to use the absolute most basic, horrible event logging utility you can, Microsoft Windows Event Viewer, to create a rule that generates some type of alert or filter for whenever a specific user account is created. Now, the point of this isn't how to use Event Viewer to generate alerts. No, the point of this is to show you that if we can do this in like 10, 15 minutes in Event Viewer, you absolutely can do this in ArcSight or Splunk or things like that as well. All right, so we're going to open up a command prompt. We're going to go into Intro Labs. We're going to generate 200 users on this system, so it looks like a good password spray. Then we're going to create a custom view in Event Viewer that if anybody accesses the Frank account, it'll generate an alert, or the filter subset. We'll call it an alert, right? Why Frank? Because. So we're going to create that by modifying the XML and creating the rule. And then you're going to see that you got some alerts that are created from the Frank account being created. And then you're going to start a password spray utilizing local password spray against your system, right? And then you should see an alert that somebody tried to access and log into Frank. So this lab is going to take us up to and through the break. So if you can set the timer, I'll resume at 10 after. Good little lab. And we know we didn't take a break last time. I apologize for that. And I'll see you in just about 27 minutes and 25 seconds. Okie dokie. All right. Try to get this set up so it doesn't fall. There we go. All right. All right. So let's do the lab. All right. I got to move this stuff around. Got the lab. We're going to connect via browser. It's the only way to do it. All right, so we're going to open up a command prompt, and then we're going to CD into Intro Labs. This is just a standard batch script that generates 200 users. I'm probably going to be modifying a lot of my labs that involve malware to using this script and getting into a habit of pulling it from GitHub in the near future, because it allows me to update it very quickly and easily. So we CD into Intro Labs, and then I'm going to do 200 user gen .bat. There we go. Create those 200 users. And then we're going to open up the event viewer. There we go. Got those users coming in. So go to the Windows logs, go to security. Takes a couple of seconds for it to load. Now what we're going to do, once we have the security event log selected, we're going to generate custom XML for that filter, but we're going to create that custom view. Now, this is just us cheating and doing this on the standard Windows system because they don't have like a full logging facility and everything. And we're trying to, create a lab that can be done in 10, 15 minutes. If I went through and it's like, no, let's set it up in Splunk. Well, then I have to teach people how to use Splunk. And honestly, I don't want to teach people how to use Splunk. So we've got that. We're going to create, I don't want to import. We're going to create a custom view. We're going to cancel that. Create the custom view. And my stuff is just in my way. And I'm going to select XML. I'm going to do edit query manually. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much, Microsoft. And then we're going to copy and paste the XML in here. So what we're basically doing is creating a query that's looking inside of the security event logs and specifically looking for event data where the name value equals the target username is Frank. Go ahead and click OK on that. I'm just going to call it Frank. Like that. Click OK. Now, right off the bat, we're going to see, I think, like 4 event IDs of Frank because this is not, it's kind of like Janice. It's looking backwards and it's looking forwards. So it's looking back in the event logs and it sees the event logs of the Frank account being created. So those are the 4 accounts associated with that. Now, a couple of quick notes about this particular account. Whenever you create this account in your environment, you're going to create a Honey user, you're going to want to actually log into that account. Because one of the ways that you can detect a Honey user account that's done this way is looking at the last login date. And this is going to be kind of complicated. First up, let's kind of go through some questions. Do you guys know what epoch time is? What is epoch time? Anyone know? I got a question. Yeah, okay, so we're talking about that exact question right now. All right, so epoch time. All right. So if we're looking at epoch time, what is epoch time? Like we got January 1st, 1970 from Ethical Hacker. So that's right. It's the beginning of time. So basically what it is the value of zero. All right. So if you're looking at epoch time, it's basically you set zero in a file that has to correlate back to an actual date and time associated with that. And then every second or millisecond from that is an offset of zero, and then it converts it into current time. So everything starts with zero and it works up. So it's basically the date that nothing on that system can be older than that date. And a ton of different parts of computer science use January 1st, 1970 as the epoch date for like files and folders and things of that nature. However, with user accounts, it's different. With user accounts, epoch time is January 1st, 1601. Anyone know why? Anyone know why? January 1st, 1601. All right, so let me tell you a story while people are typing. So let's say I go back in time and I really want to meet George Washington. George Washington, out of all the famous people in history, I would meet George Washington, right? I know a lot of people would go back and kill Hitler. That's admirable, but I want to hang out with George Washington because his history and everything is insane. He should have been shot a bunch of times and kind of a crazy dude and what he actually did, but I would want to meet George Washington. And I would try to surprise him on his birthday. So I'd go back, go to George Washington, and I would say, "Happy birthday, Mr. President." And he would be completely confused. He can be completely confused for 2 separate things. First, why is this random guy singing happy birthday to me like that, which is creepy? And the second thing that would be completely blowing his mind is I wouldn't have been there on his birthday. He would look at me and be like, "Dude, not my birthday." Why would I think it's his birthday, but it's not actually his birthday? Well, turns out this is the difference between the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar. The British Empire, until right after the founding of the United States, was actually using the Julian calendar, which is a different calendar. So the dates were slightly off. The Gregorian calendar is the calendar that we use today. And the furthest back that you can get associated with the Gregorian calendar is January 1st, 1601. So that is epoch date for user IDs. So if we want to skip over any honey user accounts as an attacker, if we're looking at an environment, all we have to do is look at the last login date. And if that last login date is January 1st, 1601, you just don't hit that file, right? You just don't do that. Another thing, somebody asked, well, what if we just look for files that are over 3 months old and then we'll just avoid those? That's not what real attackers are going to do. The reason why is stale accounts are bread and butter. That's why it's in almost every single compliance document and guide to constantly go through and remove any stale accounts from your environment, because it's absolutely something that an attacker would take advantage of. So we'd want to make sure the account is not locked. We would want to make sure that the account has been logged in at some point, and then we have a good honey account. So now let's take a look at what it looks like whenever that honey account is triggered. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to go into the lab, and we're going to CD into intro labs, like so. I'm already in PowerShell. And I'm going to set the execution policy to be unrestricted, just a security thing. Just allowing us to run things without getting all wrapped up in security. Let's go ahead and do install. Now we're going to import the module, local password spray. Now we've imported that. Now it's time to run it. All right. So now we run this. We're going to run it with a password of season and year, which is just a super great password you should always use every single time. Now it's going to go through and it's going to automatically log into 6 different user accounts. If you look closely at those 6 different user accounts, none of them are Frank. See, in order for this thing to work, it doesn't require the attacker to log in successfully to the Honey user account. It just requires an attempted logon to that account. A failed login will do. So now if we're going to go back and try to catch it, I go back here, I go refresh, and now we have our new alerts where somebody was trying to log in to the Frank account. So there we go. Now, in this particular situation with this cloud lab, I actually like to blow it up. I like to destroy the lab. Created a whole bunch of user accounts. You can also go through and do the 200 user remove script, which will just remove the accounts. But honestly, I just like blowing things up because it makes me giggle as though I'm a little boy, because blowing things up is fun. All right. And it's fun to have fun, but you have to know how. All right. So there's a bunch of different utilities and different services. If you just Google like honeypot RDP. There are literally honeypot RDP servers that are out there that you can download and you can run from GitHub. Tons of them, as a matter of fact. One of the biggest producers of honeypot-like technology is Open Canary. Open Canary is by the company Canary, and Haroon Mir is behind that company. And they have Canary honeypots for FTP, HTTP, SMB, SSH, Telnet, and so on. And you can incorporate alerting into these Open Canary projects. You can have it send email, syslog, you can have it send SMS. As long as you have a mandrel key that you can put in, you can have it automatically text you and let you know that somebody is up to some type of shenanigans in your environment. Because once again, the detection time plus reaction time equal or must be less than attack time is so critical to everything that we're going to do. We need to incorporate better detection technologies into our deception. All right, so now let's talk about honeyports. Now, this is going to take a little while for a lab, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. And excuse me. And honestly, this lab is going to take us up to, it's almost going to take us an hour with the break because it's set up as a challenge. I like to kind of set this breakpoint in the class as a little bit of a challenge for people in this class. For some people, right, it's going to involve some bash scripting. The other people in the class that are relatively new to Linux and Unix, you can just cheat and you can just try to get the thing to work. And I also recommend going in and sending it through explain shell to explain what's going on. So we'll go through, I'll explain it, and it's probably going to be about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to do the walkthrough associated with it. So just sit tight on that. So honeyports are ports that trigger an action when they're actually connected to, right? We got a blacklist, we've got an alert, we can fire up Mr. Coffee. If they're not done correctly, there's a chance that you might blacklist legitimate systems. And that's one of the goals that we're trying to show in this lab. A lot of people, when we talk about honeyports, like all an attacker has to do is just spoof their IP address, and then they can spoof our gateway, they can spoof Google, they can spoof Outlook, and they can DOS our entire network. No, most likely. No, no. That's not how that works. It's not how TCP/IP works, and it's not how this particular honeypot is going to work either. So we need to understand how these connections work and how they work as well. So we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. Another thing you can do that just you should do is fail to ban. Fail to ban monitors authentication failures in var log and their auth log. And as soon as an IP address has so many failed login attempts, it'll deny list that IP address, but it can put it associated with a time frame. So you can tune it and you can say, I want it to shut down that IP address for 15 minutes. We want to shut down that IP address for 20 minutes or an hour or whatever it is you want it to be set to. This is so easy to set up that you should set it up in any Linux distribution that you have that's facing the internet to basically deny any attacker the ability of trying to do a password spray against the services and the servers that you have in your organization. So now we're getting into the honeyports lab. Now, as I mentioned, this particular lab is kind of set up to be a challenge, right? Now, for some people, just getting it typed in is going to be the challenge. For other people, they're going to treat it as a challenge because what we're going to do is we're going to create an auto drop from the command line. Now, why are we doing this from the command line? Well, the reason why I do this is because I had to. I was in a classified environment and I had a pen test coming up. I wanted to create honeypots and they wouldn't let me bring tools in, right? They wouldn't let me go and buy a tool or bring an open source tool. So I had to write one from scratch in Bash to stop the pen testers from hitting the system. And it worked. It worked really well. The pen tester showed up, hit the port with a full vulnerability assessment scan, and we shut them down, which is awesome. Also, with that in mind, I've used this in the past with some of my friends and some of our customers at Black Hills Information Security. One of our customers had an adversarial pen test. It's basically where a pen test firm comes in and you don't want them there. No one wants them there. You just don't want to have that. So what do? It's kind of a funny story how this particular adversarial pen test happened. It wasn't us. It was a different firm doing things. And it was a good firm, by the way. It was a perfectly fine firm. And the what had happened is this was a company that had a East Coast and a West Coast network operations center. So the East Coast one was like in the DC, and the West Coast one I was thinking was California. Milpitas jumps into mind. And this new CEO comes in. And I think they had a third in Denver as well that was just being built. The new CEO comes in and is looking at this expense of having an East Coast and a West Coast knock and is very frustrated with the cost expenditure. So he's basically like, why are we spending all this money on having an East Coast and a West Coast knock? This is ridiculous. We need to get rid of one of them. Now, the IT people were like, whoa, dude, no, like that's that we need that for redundancy. We need to have that. And he said, you're just wasting my time, you're wasting my money, and we're going to get rid of one or the other. And his criteria, one of his criteria was tryouts. Went and got a pen testing firm, and they were going to do a security assessment in the East Coast knock and a security assessment in the West Coast knock. And the one that had the cleanest security assessment was going to be the knock that kept their job. So my friend was in one of those knocks. Honestly, I can't remember which, and he didn't want to lose his job. So he called me up and he said, what can we do? And we did this. So we set up honeyports throughout the entire environment. So when the pen testers showed up and scanned the environment, as soon as they tripped on this honeyport with a full established connection, as soon as they did that, they were deny listed. Now, when you're a pen tester and you run a scan against an environment and it goes dark, now some people will be like, well, they're blocking you. That's not what goes through your head. as a pen tester. What goes through your head as a pen tester is, oh my God, I just brought the whole network down. Pen tester shows up to my friend and says, hey, is the network down? He's like, nope, everything's fine. It took him about 3 hours to figure out that they were being actively shunned by honeypots. And they requested my friend remove the honeypot technology. My friend said, that's fine, but I want it listed in your report. Every finding from this point on was because we had to reduce the security of our environment for your security assessment to proceed, which one dig on the pen testing firm, they didn't put that in the report initially. It was added in, but it wasn't in initially, right? But this worked incredibly well because as soon as they started scanning the environment, they got locked out. Now, the other company, and this is long enough, the guy doesn't work there anymore. But I had a former student of mine that was working security at Apple. And what they did at Apple was they put these honeyports on the outside of their environment. So if there's any skidiots that were actively scanning IP space of Apple computer, if they hit these honeyports, they automatically put those IP addresses on a deny list. This reduced the amount of attack traffic that was being logged into Apple computers, that it reduced it enough. I don't know, I haven't verified this number, but he said it saved them almost $100,000 a month in log storage costs alone from the logs that were being generated. For if people could just scan, it was generating all the logs in their firewalls and their routers, but by shunning those people, it cleaned that signal to noise ratio, so the skidiots disappeared from their logs. That's powerful. That's really, really cool. So we've seen this in a number of different places. I'm going to give you some hints, some recipe ingredients, if you will. IP tables is incredibly powerful and it's built into Linux, right? If we look at a simple rule, we have IP tables dash capital A. That means we're adding a rule. Input, that's the chain. So you'd have like input, output, forward. You have target to NAT, things of that nature. We have the minus P, which is the protocol, is TCP. And then the S is the source IP address. In this situation, I'm just doing an example of 172.16.30.72. And then anything that matches the criteria of being a TCP packet that's coming from the source of 172.16.30.42 will be dropped. There we go. Easy peasy. Now, basically what you're going to do is create a same rule, but instead of 172.16.30.42, you're going to make that a variable that's dynamically assigned when the attacker scans the system. So this will be a variable. If you want to clear your rules, you can do IP tables minus F. If you want to list your rules, you can do IP tables minus L. We're going to be using Bash for this, and Bash is wicked powerful. It is also used pretty much everywhere on Linux and Unix systems. It's the first scripting language that a lot of people learn in IT. And if you want to do a loop in Bash, well, there's a number of ways, but here's one of them. You can do while space, open bracket, space, one space, close bracket, semicolon, do something, semicolon, done. And it'll just loop again. You could also do while colon, semicolon, do something, done. You could do while squiggly bracket, true, close squiggly bracket, bunch of ways to do loops. All right. This is just one way to do a loop. If you wish to assign a variable, you can do foo equals bar. And then if you do echo $foo, that's your variable, right? Could auto deny like this, Apple, be used as a vector for DOS attack using IP spoofing? No. And I'm going to explain why in a little bit. But it has to do with the TCP IP handshake. You can spoof, but you can't really spoof a full established handshake. Now, I'll talk about Kevin Mitnick and some of that stuff on it, but you absolutely can do it. We got another one, had a long-standing argument with auditor security and internal control over stale AD accounts for exited employees. Keep forever, disable. I would lean towards just disable them or turn them into actual honeypot systems. That's what I would do, but that's kind of how I'm wired. But by and large, the overwhelming majority of them should be removed completely. Also, we can use cut. If I do something like uname minus A, if I do something like uname minus A, there's a lot of variables and they're separated by a space. So what I can do is I can say, I want to see the second field with the delimiter of a space, right? So we can do that and we can pull out the specific value of interest to us. So what you're going to want to do is run netcat. You're going to capture where the output is going to come. You're going to capture that variable with cut, and then you're going to assign it to a variable. All right. So netcat is the bomb. right? It's still used. It's like one of the oldest security tools in history. It's been around a really, really long time. And it listens in this particular situation where we do NVL on port 8080. So we're saying don't resolve any names, be verbose, which is very important, and listen on port 80. All right. Now, some additional Linux things. We're going to use grep to grep specific things out of the data. We also will be piping data from one to another on that as well. So we can see that. You can see that's above your enter key. That's the little pipe command. And then we also can use different redirects. We have standard input, output, and error. And sometimes dev null is just a really good place to send things. And awk can be your friend, but you can use print or anything else. I think in this example, I did it with awk. So you're going to need to chain this stuff together. Now, some of you are looking at this and you're like, I'm in danger. I have no idea what the hell he's talking about in this. And that's fine. Perfectly, perfectly fine. Because I have the answer right here and you can cheat. That answer is for the people that maybe are a little bit rusty to Linux. And believe it or not, getting all the spaces and everything lined up can actually take a long time. For those of you that know what you're doing, that's your hint, right? I want you to figure out how to do it on your own, okay? So, like I said, let's go ahead and let's set the timer to 40 after. To 40 after. A good long time to work on this. And then we'll come back. I'll do the walkthrough and then we will explain kind of why it's set up this way. We'll also explain why it is that this does not trigger for spoofing. I'll actually demonstrate why it doesn't trigger when somebody's trying to spoof an IP address on that as well. So it's your call and we'll see you in just a little bit. So it's going to be about 48 minutes, I think, on the timer. 47 minutes on the timer, and we'll be back. Right. So we need to share a screen. That would be good. Oh, I should probably get Discord up and running. There we go. Put that up over here. There. All right. So, okay. So let's go through this. I got to share my screen and share the desktop, share that. And now we're ready to go. All right. So, about this particular lab, like I said, there's a couple of different ways that you can go about doing it. One, you can type it in by hand, which I think is always a good idea. The other thing that you could do is you could solve the solution and come up with your own approach. Equally good idea. I like that idea as well. However, the other thing that you could do is you could cheat. I have in the intro class files, I have the actual script right here because it's easier to copy and paste it. But that's not what we're going to do, right? Like I think copying and pasting the entire lab and working it that way, well, somewhat it'd be fun. It would get us done faster. I think there's that, right? But what kind of pedagogical like improvement would we have? Like we need to go through how we'd actually do this and can we learn? Can we learn in doing this insofar as how to build things? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about something that I refer to as ping port parse. If you're ever troubleshooting, if you know how to ping port parse, that's all you need to do. That's it. Can you ping the system? Is the port open? Can you parse the error messages and parse the command that you're trying to do? So here's the script, but I think a lot of people are like, well, what the hell is the script actually doing? And how does it actually work? Let's do it. Let's actually go through the script. Let's tear the script apart and I'll show you how it works. So bin bash is just that's it. It's just bash. It's a bash script. We're going to do echo started, which is what it says on the tin. It's just going to print started. That's it. And then we have our loop. And then for each iteration of the loop, we're going to do some stuff. And that's what I want to focus on. So let's break this down. We have IP equals, and then we get this backtick right here. Okay. That backtick, which is right left of your 1 on your keyboard, if you look, it's matched up with this backtick over here. So we have 2 backticks. So what's going to happen between those 2 backticks is a bunch of stuff. And then whatever comes out of that bunch of stuff is going to be assigned the variable IP. So we're creating a variable called IP, and the value of what's going to be an IP is the output of all of this gobbledygook right here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this gobbledygook apart and we're going to parse it. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the first part of the said gobbledygook. I got to become root though. So let's become root. We're going to paste in just that part. So we're going to do netcat, don't resolve any names, be verbose, and listen on port 1025. I'm going to open up a command prompt on my Windows computer system, which is going to bite me in the ass. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's absolutely going to bite me in the ass in a little bit, and I'll show you what that looks like. And I need to get the IP address of my Linux system. Pull up another command prompt here. I'm going to do don't need Wireshark yet. May not need it. I might skip the Wireshark part. Let's just do that. And there we go. Gonna get my IP address. So I do ifconfig. There we go. My IP address of my Linux system is 10.10.64.151. 64.151. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an nmap scan against 10.10.64.151. And let's see what Nmap finds on that system. So it's going to kick off the scan. It's going to scan my Linux computer system. And it found these ports. It found 22, which makes sense because that's SSH. That's how we're connected. We also have VNC and X11. And then my honey port, or the beginning baby proto zygote of the honey port on 1025. So we have that port. But I want you to notice that Netcat didn't do anything. It's not giving me any data at all, which is kind of a bummer. But if I take my Nmap scan and I change that scan to an S capital T, watch what happens. It's now going to print out something over there. All right, awesome. And it only triggered in a full established connection. And that's what the little S capital T means. It's going to go through, it's going to make a full TCP connection. And in the event of a total TCP connection, we get this output. It says connection from 10.10.75.140, source port received. Awesome. That's good stuff. Now, out of all of that good stuff, I want to assign just this to the variable IP address. So there's a couple of ways I can do that. I can use cut, take the output. I can do cut, specify a delimiter, and pull the third variable. I can also do awk, and I did it with awk because I don't know why I did it with awk, but I just did it with awk. But we want to grab that third variable, and we want to assign that to a variable called IP. All right, so we'll start building this out. Now, what is this stuff here? That's really weird, these little numbers. So I want to take the output of the netcat command and I want to clean it out and just kind of flush it. All right, so we're going to take standard, anything that comes out of that netcat. We have standard error. Let's go through. 0 is input, 1 is output, error is 2, right? So what we want to do is be able to capture that output so it can be put into the grep statement, but we have to get it into standard output so grep can capture it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the error, because netcat, whenever it prints something like that right here, that's not output. And the reason why that's not output, let me show you real quick. Let's do hello. So I'm going to do vim hello, and I'm going to put in this. Hello. All right. And then I'm going to close that out like so. And now we got it written. So what we're going to do is we're going to do netcat listen on a port. And when somebody connects, we're going to put in the hello file. All right. So if I start that out and then I run netcat, I think I got to go. I don't think I have netset in my path. So let's go into intro class files. And if I make a connection, if I go NC to 10.10.64.151 on port 1025, it prints out, hello. So it kicks out that output. But notice it didn't give me connection from 10.10.75.140. Two separate data streams. Never cross the streams, Ray. Crossing the streams would be bad. You want to have standard output and you want to have standard error. You don't want to cross the streams. because that would be bad. If you want to know how bad, I want you to imagine a Twinkie the size of Manhattan accelerating at the speed of light. So whenever Netcat is talking to you, it puts it into something called standard error. Error does not mean errors like bad things. Error is just messages coming from the tool. That's it. So this is output and this is error, but I want to get that error into the output. In fact, I do want to cross the streams. I want to get the output of Netcat to go into this grep statement. And then whatever is left over, I want it to go into dev null. So it's going to clean up and it's going to pipe it into my grep statement. And notice I'm grepping received. The reason why I'm grepping the string received is I only want the lines with the word received in them. That's it. That's all that we want. Then we pipe it through aux. Let's go ahead and let's do that. So I'm going to take this statement. We're going to build it out piece by piece. There we go. And now if I make that connection to that system, you see that I have that connection from 10, 10, 75, 140 on port or source port 51802 received. All right. So I'll kill my connection. There we go. But look how that's different from up above. Before it did two lines. It did listening on and then connection from. But as soon as I added in that grep statement, it is only pulling out the line with the word received, building it bit by bit. Then I'm going to do this statement with awk, which is just another way of pulling out the third value. So I'll copy that and we'll paste that in there like so. Now, if I make that connection again, notice it doesn't fire right away. I made the connection. It doesn't fire until I close it. Then it just prints the IP address. So if we're looking at how we're building this, right? We pull out netcat, don't resolve any names, be verbose, listen on port 1025. I get two lines. One saying it's listening, the other one when a connection is made. I want to clean that up to just grab the one line with the received. Next step, now it says connection from 101075 140, port 5418 5851802 received. Then whenever I do the print statement using awk to print the third value, now it's just grabbing the IP address. Now I want to assign that IP address to a variable. So now what I do is I take these ticks, right? I put the ticks around it. So it's going to run the whole command and just give us the final output. And it's going to assign it to an IP address, or sorry, it's going to assign it to a variable called IP. And let me show you what that looks like. So now if I hit enter and I make the connection, I've made the connection, nothing. I kill the connection, nothing. Doesn't print it to the screen. And the reason why it doesn't print it to the screen is because I have a variable called IP that is now where that IP address resides. I just took that whole mess of everything and I dropped it into a bucket called IP. Got a question from Business Nick. Is it standard to block after the connection is closed? It depends on your version of Netcat. This particular version of Netcat will only trigger after that connection closes out. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. I've had other versions of Netcat that will only trigger with the full established connection. And Business Nick, I'm coming back to that here in a couple of seconds. So now I'm going to take the IP tables rule, right? IP tables, add a rule to the input chain, protocols TCP, sources IP address, block. All right. So now we're ready. Let's take this whole script and let's blow up my VMs, huh? Does that sound like fun, chat? Let's do it. So I'm going to do nano and I'm going to do honeyport.sh. I'm going to add in my script. I'm going to write it out and I'm going to exit. All right. So now I have my script and it's almost ready to go. I need to go chmod and we're going to do plus X. We're going to make it executable because it's going to give it to you. And now we have our honeyport is executable. We are now ready to run it. So now I'm going to do honeyport.sh. It's fired, started, it's running. Are you ready for some chaos? We're not going to do chaos right away. We're not going to do chaos right away. I'm sorry, the chaos is coming. The chaos is coming, but we're going to learn the difference between nmap scans and why you can't spoof. All right. So I'm going to run my syn scan, ports open. Rerun it again, port's open. Never fired the honey port, right? So if I just do that one port, I can put it in as an option here and do 1025. It's open, it's open, it's open, it's open, doesn't fire. Now, when I do this, right? When I do this, I am making a SYN scan. So a SYN scan does not complete the TCP/IP three-way handshake. It does not. And Netcat will not trigger and print out the received until it receives the full TCP/IP three-way handshake. Okay? All right? It won't. So that means I can do decoys like this. I can do decoys and I can do 8.8.8.8. I can do 8.9, 8.8.9.9. I can do 1.2.3.4. I can do 5.6.7.8. I can run all of these different options. I don't know why. Oh, hold on. I don't know why my clear screen command came through. Now I can use decoys, right? We can use decoys and you'll actually see those decoys coming through. So I can spoof all day long. So I become root and then I'll do TCP dump minus 0, right? So now we have a bunch of packets. Now, if I run this, you're actually going to see the IP addresses that I'm spoofing. You're going to see those spoofed IP addresses, but it never triggers. It never triggers the honeypot, ever. All right? It just doesn't. But watch what happens. Watch what happens when I do a full established connection, right? When I do that full established connection, you're going to see two things happen. All right. One, if I do minus capital T for a full established connection, as soon as I hit that, Nmap tells me I'm not real bright. Nmap jumps in and says, you have specified options that will require raw socket access. These will not be honored for a TCP connect scan. That option is right here. You cannot spoof a full established connection on modern operating systems. And I do that with an asterisk because anything's possible. What you're trying to do is guess and do a collision with a 32-bit number, which has 4.72 billion possible values. And you're trying to guess what that is in a nanosecond. All right. S is SYN scan. T is full connect. So SYN, if you look at the three-way handshake, you do SYN, SYNAC, ACK. And what we're doing is doing SYN, SYNAC, reset. We don't complete the three-way handshake with the SYN scan. When we do a full connect scan, we do SYN, SYNAC, ACK, then reset. One packet difference. But that one packet difference makes all of the difference in the world. Okay? So two things happened. One, Nmap told me I'm an idiot. Said, you dumb. You can't do spoofing of IP addresses with a full connect scan. You just can't. Give up. The other thing that happened is I'm cut off from my Kali system. Notice it looked like TCP dump froze. I can't interact. And the reason for that is, if we go back over here, I go to my Kali system via SSH, become root. If I do IP tables, you see drop any and all traffic coming from 1010, 75, 140 to anywhere. All right. So I like this lab for a couple of reasons. One, because it gets me into kind of working through troubleshooting IP table. It gets me to the point where we can talk about some troubleshooting. It's a nice little challenge. And I also give you guys the solution so you can go in and you can create it. That solution file is right here. Let me share that with you all. If you want to play around with it, there you go. So you can look at the solution, you can compare why was yours not working if it didn't work, and why did mine work? So what happened there? Spaces matter for a lot of these different things. So a really fun little lab, but I also like to show it to just show you how quick and easy it is to do this, number one. And number two, the reason why I like to show you all this is I really like to articulate just what the risk is for doing a honeyport like this. Yes, it is possible that somebody could spoof a full established connection. That risk is incredibly low. The only time I know it's ever been done was Kevin Mitnick and Satomo Shimomura, and that's in Satomo's book, The Pursuit and Capture of Kevin Mitnick. And that also was done back in the late 90s, where TCP sequence number prediction was far more insecure than it is today. And if you're looking at the risk associated with this risk is no higher than it is for just surfing the internet and running a server on the internet. All right. So that's what we have. All right. We're now in the Ask Me Anything, a little late. I am sorry for that. So if anybody has any questions, now's the time to rock them out. Deception technology moves from small scale pilots to enterprise wide deployment. Operational failure modes tend to surface force, identity sprawl, telemetry, all of that true. More importantly, how does the risk profile differ between distributed disruption architectures and centralized ones? So, what I like to look at this, Grimster, is whenever you're talking about this class and how it leads into overall deception in organizations, is I like this class to be the on-ramp, the gateway drug, the marriage of cyber deception. I get you hooked on cyber deception. We do some open source stuff with cyber deception, and then you can start having conversations in your organization about large scale cyber deception and commercial technologies. You're looking at like Elusive Labs and all of these guys that are out there doing cyber deception. It's awesome. Lots of products. I talked about Canary as one of my favorites. But one of the things about that is trying to get management to bite off on it all in one shot. Difficult. However, if you can ease them into it like a frog in a frying pan, it makes it a lot easier for people to digest the concept, see some quick wins so they can actually start purchasing the full technology. So that's the way I look at this class. This is the beginning of the conversation. Here's a bunch of free open source tools that you can tie this stuff in. Now we can start talking about how we can start looking at selling your organization politically to get this as well. What conferences will BHIS be attending this year? I honestly don't know. The content community team has a master spreadsheet. There's a lot. If you want to reach out, Jelly Beanster, to Deb, and ask her, I think that she might be able to get a list for everybody. And part of the reason why you want to come to see us at a conference is we have the best swag in the world. Like I'm not saying, I mean that with the absolute honesty. It's like a Tori Hanzo steel. I can say without ego that they are the best swag bags you will ever receive. It's
Yeah.
not boasting, it's truth. All right. In the vein of purple teaming and other stuff like Atomic Red Team, Bloodhound, and Plumhound, do you have suggestions for free tools that companies can use to assess their current security state? Yes. Go look at Graph Runner from Bo Bullock, DAFTAC, for looking at your cloud infrastructure. What do you think of the future of independent consulting is? Screwed. Bad. It's bad. I'm just going to say it's bad. The level of insurance that I needed when I started BHIS all the way back in 2008 was about $3,000 for me to have a good umbrella policy and cyber liability insurance for me to start this company. If you're looking at the amount of insurance that we spend now, oh my, I would say we're probably over 100 grand a year in insurance costs alone. Also, tooling, it's not an issue of just going through and buying, Nessus and getting to work. We also are using like Outflank, we're using Nighthawk, we're using Brute Ratel, we're using all of these different tools, and it's expensive on that as well. Size network for cyber deception, any size network, just set it up, it's ready to go.
Pale horse, or
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
it looks like Food Bark. Send me a DM. I can give you a discount for Mile High.
Yeah, we got you. And anybody can. You should just flood Megan with DMs for discount codes for Mile High.
Listen.
Hey, that's my job. So
Yeah.
it's like Deb. Deb was having a nervous breakdown because we got so many people signing up at conferences. She's like, I can't keep up with the swag. I'm so
I can keep up with discount codes, but yes.
absolutely.
So if you want a discount and join us in Denver, I can give conference only. And if you want to attend in-person training, I might be able to come up with
We could
something
swing
too.
something for in person.
I got y'all.
All right. What other questions do we have? Oh, is there any plan to update AC Hunter Community Edition? Current versions of Linux? Well, it just so happens that the AC Hunter, the Community Edition, is Rita. The new version of AC Hunter is actually released, which I think is pretty cool. And it's actually out there, but just for current customers. So we'll be releasing that more openly probably in the next couple of weeks. I got a lot going on. So, Megan, they want to know about the satellite hacking class.
Yeah, well, you said it at the beginning of class,
I got to do it.
so you got
Got
to
to do
show
it.
it now.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Actually, that's not the right one.
John just writes classes for fun.
Well, that's what I did this weekend
Yeah,
or over Christmas break. It
yeah.
was delightful. I was able to actually write classes. So the satellite hacking class is kind of fun because it's a 2 day class. And satellite is weird. If you want to know what satellite hacking is, it's IoT and software defined radio. If you know those two concepts, if you understand the concept of Internet of Things, and you understand the concept of software defined radio, then you're going to get satellite hacking really easily, right? So we kind of break down the different types of satellites, LEOs, MEOs, HEOs, GEOs for different types of things. What are the ground segments, user segments, the different types of satellites and where they reside, kind of setting up the basics and fundamentals. We have a really cool lab with the peers Mita. I can never really pronounce it. So we have emulators that you can work with in the satellite class and talking about onboard systems architecture, SIGINT, and we get right into SDR style hacking. So we go through and we talk about what are the different tools that can do different frequencies of software defined radio hacking. We talk about GNU radio, which I'm going to show you all here in a couple of seconds, which is wild. It's super cool. And then we talk about the different blocks for creating a flow within GNU Radio to take a signal, because all signals, when you're doing signal analysis, are all wave files. So we go through taking an example wave file from a satellite. And then how do you process that to be able to identify and start decoding that as well? Nope, you don't need any special licenses for radio in the class. Throttle. Okay, so we're doing a lot of file analysis for like the wave files. And if you send a wave file through your CPU at the speed it reads it, it can overload very, very quickly. So what you can do is throttle it, which causes things to slow down so you can interact with it. We do a frequency sync so we can actually mess with the frequencies. And this one's actually using a fast Fourier transform, which is a different way of displaying waveforms of data. Quadrature demod that we're going through and we're breaking down the modulation and setting up the gain associated with the signals. Low pass filter, we're cleaning out the signals so that they're proper. And you want to clean out. So if you know that your frequency for what the satellite is running at is, like, 1.5K, you want to clear out everything else below that. QT GUI time sync. So you're moving from a fast Fourier transform and moving it into the timing domain. And I'll show you what that looks like. Clock recovery. When you're looking at satellites, there's it's going to be ones and zeros. So we have to somehow get those ones and zeros and find the determination between the ones and zeros. Binary slicer, then we take those ones and zeros, start slicing it. Then we're doing UCAR to float, so we can set it to 32 bits. Then we're doing tag debug. That's pretty cool because what we're looking for is like an access tag. So for a ton of signals analysis, you'll look for a frequency string that'll determine that this is the beginning of the data that's being transferred as well. And then align it to 32 bits, then you repack it, then you dump it out to a file, then you got an analyzer. And I'll show you what those what those labs look like because we walk people through all of this. Talk about dumpster diving, sat dump. All the shit I talked about is hard. Tools like sat dump are automatically, you can take a waveform file, send it through sat dump, and it'll try its damn best to process it for you, which is pretty cool. Looking at the different types of satellites for like weather satellites, APT, LRPT, high resolution. I had to put something in from the movie Real Genius. I don't know if you've ever seen that. There's a scene in Real Genius where they're coming up with a laser that they can track a satellite. And at any rate, I had to do Real Genius. It's a great movie. Talk about Iridium satellites, the grandfather of Starlink, different operating systems for software-defined radio, talking about how you can set up your own ground station. All it's fun. This is cool. This is what I have up here. These guys are great. So if we're looking at SatNogs, they are constantly collecting data telemetry from satellites. Okay, they're grabbing that telemetry so you can actually see a waterfall of the frequencies. You can pull down the raw data associated with it. You can look at the geo, like where it is, where the path is for the polar plot. And you can, like I said, you can pull it down. You can start doing analysis on it. Going fast, I'm sorry, because I want to get to the labs. So right here is, this one doesn't look right. Oh, that's okay. So we have these labs that are set up and it's all in the cloud. It's all in MetaCTF. So where we talk about the interceptor is taking those software-defined radio concepts and walking people through how to create that flow graph for SDR step by step by step to be able to start getting the binary bits out of the data. So that's one of the labs. Next one, how do you identify a denial of service attack? By looking at flow graphs in GNU Radio. So we take the existing one and then we process it down to the bits and bytes, and then we can see the actual attacks. Hacking SLE, very common protocol utilized for satellite communications. We have an entire lab based on a DEF CON talk where they talk about how you can intercept and do ARP cache poisoning and put in your own commands via SLE. What do we got? Sat dump lab. If we have a wave file and we want to process it inside of sat dump to see if it can actually automatically process that wave file and decode it for us, we got a lab for that. What else do we have? Here, playing around with satellite emulation. So you can do that as well. So I'm really excited. The big problem that we have is this is not an introductory level class, right? It is not an issue of, it is not an introductory level class where, yes, it's introduction to satellite hacking, but it's not something like, here's a command prompt. There's a lot of advanced topics in this class. So this is just passive listening. Yes and no. Whenever we get into the hacking SLE lab, we're emulating the endpoints that are communicating with SLE, and from the we're using the Vision Space SLE provider, and you're actually doing attacks in this emulated environment that we have. No, I'm not taking people outside with dishes and launching attacks against real satellites. But it's I'm sorry. I know a lot of people would like that quite a bit, but this is something I'm excited about. We've got a little bit more to do on the labs. I have to get in studio to record the class and go through it. So kind of excited for the class as well. Does it go over anything to do with encrypted communications? It goes over how you can identify that they're encrypted communications. And that has to do with looking at the data stream and looking for entropy. We also talk about a little bit that's kind of fun is some of the folks at IO Active a number of years ago. Let's see if I can find it. They went through and they did a whole bunch of research on a whole bunch of satellite components and were able to find multiple critical vulnerabilities from devices like Harris or devices from Hughes and all of these different vendors. And whenever you're dealing with things like encryption, just like IoT, sometimes the vendors are putting like a static encryption key. So it's using the same encryption key for every single device that's out there. So that would be like more hardware reverse engineering to pull that out as well. So there you go. That's what we got for the satellite hacking class. So good stuff. All right. What other questions do you have? I'm going to kill my VMs because I don't want to burn my credits right now. You should take a moment and kill your VMs too.
Good call.
Well, okay, so let's talk about like actually trying to hack a satellite in the sky. So a quick note on that. I have actually hacked satellites. I used to work at the NRO. Well, I worked with Northrop Grumman at the NRO. And to try to hack a satellite in motion is really hard. You can totally do it with the right equipment, about 10 grand. You can buy a satellite that can automatically do tracking and pull down where in the sky that satellite is. Don't do that. It's much, much, much easier to break into the ground segment, gain access to the ground segment, and take control of the satellite from the ground segment itself. So that's what we've done in the past. That's the easier way to actually do it. So we got some people, I think, that signed up, Megan.
For the conference?
Yeah, I think we got some
Yep.
people that are
I've
signing
been
up.
I've been I've been DMing like a maniac.
Yeah. Also, the Hackasat competition. A lot of our labs are pulled from the Hackasat competition, and we're going to give credit to those amazing resources out there because they're just amazing ways to get started. Could you do a Wi-Fi version of the satellite hacking class? Yes. We just got this working last week. Here we go. Here you go. You ask and you receive. Here's a full Wi-Fi emulated virtualized environment. And by the way, do you guys want another code to try out Wi-Fi Forge in MetaCTF? Because Wi-Fi Forge is literally a full wireless hacking environment that is completely emulated with real tools. So, I don't know, maybe I could give you guys that code so you could play with it, maybe?
I'm sure that they want that. Do you have the code?
Yeah, let me pull it real quick. Let me
All
stop
right.
sharing. Pause.
Just don't charge John's credit card, guys. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. They already are. Um, boy, and Outlook is not working for me right now. That's a problem.
Yeah, my internet is really wonky today.
Okay, I'm just waiting for my Outlook to open. There it is. Okay, so let me go Ben Bowman. Got it. Just give me a second. I'll share it with everybody. Okay, so let's get this into Discord. There you go. There's the code. You put that into MetaCTF, and I just do that right now. So if I go into MetaCTF right here, I go back into Cloud Labs, the code I just shared with you, put it in here like that, submit it. Now I have Wi-Fi Forge Labs right there, and you will too. Now you have to go to the Wi-Fi Forge GitHub and you have to follow the instructions in GitHub, but now you can do wireless stuff out there. And literally all the wireless tools work exactly as they would as though you had an adapter and everything. So all of this is kind of building up, just kind of share you guys what's going on, and then I've got to get running. Is we are taking all of the labs that I've been doing. We have like 38 labs. And then we have the wireless labs, we have the satellite labs, we have cloud labs, we have all these labs, right? And we're creating a lot more. I have a fleet of flying monkeys in Poland and in Romania that are speeding right now, and they're creating labs for this. So let me go to play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. They're creating labs for as many of the backdoors and breaches cards as possible. So in the future, our labs won't be going to GitHub. You'll be coming to a backdoors and breaches site, and you'll be going to the appropriate card for the attack, and then go to the labs for those to be able to do the labs. We're going to be unifying this. We're also going to be giving everybody 2 free hours of lab time in MetaCTF per week. It doesn't roll over. It restarts every week. And we're going to be starting up a webcast, Backdoors and Breaches, where we do free labs on YouTube. Instead of like just a webcast talking about security shit, sewing cool stuff, we want to make sure that people will be able to get their hands dirty to be doing these things as well. So that is coming. And like I said, I have a lot of labs. This is what I love to do. If I could stop managing BHIS and just do this stuff, I'd be really happy. And we're kind of working towards that. So we're trying to give as much as we can to the community, and we're really trying to cut a really big differentiator between who we are and what we do for the community as a training organization and other organizations that won't be named. But Megan, hopefully tomorrow you want to jump on a little bit earlier with Megan. She can talk about what we do for corporations. Like we have corporate catalogs and all kinds of training that's available for people that it's really a stupid low price. We're just trying to get
Yes.
more people in there and trained. Megan, if you want to take a couple of minutes and set it up, go for it.
Yeah. So I let me get it up and for tomorrow, just because I don't want to glitch out. My internet, like I said, is super shaky. But I'll get some information up tomorrow for everybody, and I'll go through it and let you see exactly what you get when you get the corporate subscriptions. I'll demo it and stuff.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's
Let me just say, you're not even ready.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a
So,
lot. All right, everybody, get out of here. I'll see you tomorrow.
okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. The recordings will be posted in the resources channel later today for all of our streaming people. Again, if you need a certificate of completion, please make sure that you register. Registration is still open on our website. And I'll talk to you guys in the morning about our corporate subscriptions. Hopefully, you guys, even the available to do the corporate subscriptions. We still do have our Black Friday sale open. So that's another thing. But I'll talk about that tomorrow. So hopefully everyone has a good evening, and we will see you for day 3 tomorrow. So go ahead and get out of here, Daryl. Go ahead and kill it with fire. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.